Jim Hokanson is up tonight. He's going to give us a thing about segmenting. Jim, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, this is a pen meeting, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about segmented bowls, and I hope you'll see why when we get there. I'm not really an accomplished pen turner. I am an aspiring segmenter. Some of my stuff is reasonably good, but I've got an awful lot to learn. This is one of my pieces, but when you do segmenting, you end up with wedges, which are trapezoid pieces of all sizes, all shapes, all materials, and I hate to throw them away because that wood is expensive. We've been reading about that lately, about how expensive the wood is. Also, the sled that I use to cut the wedges, in order to be safe, I always end up with 3 to 4 inches of leftover sticks, and so I have another box full of those leftover sticks. What I really love doing is sticking things together with my favorite glues. Now, Robert likes Type Bond 3. Yeah, Type Bond 3. I haven't used that much. I may start using it more. But I've done a whole lot with Type Bond 2. I recently discovered this little thing. It's called a Babe Bot. Facing me, I'm sorry. This Babe Bot, and it's all of $9 at Woodcraft. And one of my challenges has been I always put too much glue down, and this has a really narrow slot at the top, and so it's kind of hard to put a lot of glue down on a piece of wood, and so that's helped me make not quite as much of a mess. And when you're gluing up long sticks, I found this at Woodcraft. It's called a silicon roller, and you can put a line of glue and then run it back and forth, and it's got little serrations in the drum, and it spreads the glue out really well. And it's all of $12 maybe at Woodcraft. I really like that.
Does the glue just like peel off of it when it dries?
It's both of those glues are water soluble, and so you just run it in water. If you put a little bit of soap in the water, it comes off really really well. Also gets off your fingers. One of the first things you do is you start sticking sticks together to make a compound stick, something like this. And I'm going to really challenge Chris tonight. And you need to make this as an assembly. And I've made probably 5 or 6 different glue trays of different configurations, but they all have the blue paint on the back, kind of the backsplash, blue tape on the backslash, and this red tape. I should have looked up the name of it. I find it at Home Depot. It's with the paint supplies. It releases the glue, the piece with the glue on it very readily, and it lasts and lasts and lasts. I probably go 6 months at a time before I have to replace the glue. Now this little one I use for gluing up small pieces, like a single facet of a bowl. My latest one, and you'll have to go to the camera one, is 36 inches long, and it's got this 1 1/4 inch box aluminum box frame. I actually got this idea from Chris, but he doesn't remember, I don't think. I screwed on a stop block, and then you can put the set of sticks there, and I've got an aluminum angle, and put it here, and then I use F clamps to clamp the pieces together, and use a lot of clamps, maybe one every 3 inches or so. This slide talks about gluing the glue strips together, and I put a single line of glue down. I then use that roller to spread it out, and then you see all the clamps there. And that's worked pretty well. Before we use the square structures on both sides, we found we were not getting something with a square cross section because we'd squeeze too tightly on the top or the bottom side. And with the two right angle components, we're doing a lot better with that. Now, once you got a stick, we can go to the next slide. Once you got a stick, you can do a lot with it. I do a lot of things with it, but they all involve cutting that stick on a diagonal. In the this camera here, this stick had a walnut, padauk, and maple, and I cut strips of wood off of it at a 30-degree angle. 30 degrees turns out to be a really common angle that segmenters use for different projects. It's important that they all have the same width, so you have to have some kind of a stop on your table saw to cut those at the same width. And you can get really complicated with second, third, and fourth, and fifth generation cuts, where you take one of the strips and rotate it or flip it, glue it together, cut it, rotate and flip, and cut. And I haven't gone beyond the second generation. The others are really intriguing for me. But they all depend on that first cut that you do, second generation cut that you do to be perfect, or the compounding error gets so bad that you really won't be happy with what you're getting. So as an example, I have a chevron piece, still looking down, and here's two strips that we cut, and they were cut at 30 degrees. And they don't look like much at this point, but I will say a couple of things. It's important that the 3 color pieces in the middle have the same width between pieces or in your whole stick as well. And I've found that it's really important for what I call the margin, the 2 pieces on the outside, to be the same width. These weren't quite, and it gave me some problems. But what I did just now is I rotated and flipped, and now I've got a chevron. And you can see that these didn't align, and it's because the 2 pieces didn't have, the margins weren't equal. When you want to use this component in a segmented bowl, you're going to cut off this portion here at the top above the black line. Can you see the black line? And you're going to cut off the part below that line. Now, most people throw those away. And this is where we get into some of the pen blank things. I think they're gold. And they end up in a bag. And I save them for a rainy day, and I make things out of it. But here is there's a completed chevron cut to the dimensions that I want, ready to go into a segmented bowl. You can do a lot of interesting things with glued together sticks. And this one has just a single line down the middle, it's thin. This one has a wide central line, and so does this one. These ended up being the same project, just in different colors. I think this is walnut and oak, walnut and maple, and probably hackberry and padauk. And these were just things that I had left over. Now, margin, I think, turns out to be really important. And on these, I didn't have enough margin. I should have had way more material on the outside. But with those things, cut in at different angles, rotating and flipping, you can make diamonds formed out of 4 pieces or 2 what would be like a chevron. And this is cut at 45 degrees, I think, instead of 30. And you can get what's starting to be an arrow. And you can see why the margin's important, because they don't have a complete arrow. And on this one with the diamond, I didn't have enough material, and I didn't get my cut. Because what you're doing on that one is you're cutting down the center of a piece that was cut at 30 degrees, and I didn't get in exact center, and so that line kind of moved as it went through the stick. And I've got other diamonds, and they start getting really small at the other end. So that second generation cut wasn't very good on any of these. But a larger margin would have really helped. And some other things you can do is I wanted a diagonal line in one of my segmented bases. And so this is maple, ambrosia maple, and mahogany. And this one is maple and mesquite. I use this in a bowl with a diamond that was in it, but these were just accents. So these are kind of things you can do with cutting things at angles. I think that the next slide talks about, you'll see that this is from a bowl that Debbie made. And she did a really good job of picking the colors in this one. And this one is spalted pecan, yellow heart, and walnut. And her bowl turned out gorgeous. But what's really attractive to me was the leftover pieces were all walnut and all pecan. And I'll show you those in a minute. Oh, yes, we have a video. They call it the chevron video. And Chris is keeping me honest. Okay, I have a fancy miter gauge. I'm cutting some of those pieces at 30 degrees. And one thing, I'm very deliberate when I do these cuts. And I think it's easy to be deliberate before you cut. And this is kind of a safety minute thing. But I think it's just as important to be deliberate after you make the cut, and think about where your hands are going to be, and how you're going to move the pieces out of the way. Chris and I bought sleds from a guy, Pete Markin, and he told us about using a pencil with one of those big erasers on the end. That gets your fingers 3 or 4 inches away from the piece. But that's how I cut my first generation cuts for making a chevron.
Jim, where did you get that stop?
That stop I bought from Amazon, and it's really inexpensive. And I will put that in the notes on the video so you can get it. I think Chris bought one too. It was $25 or $30, something like that. It's not particularly expensive. I found it really useful, except for real thin stock, because it has a ball bearing, and I think the wheel that you rub up against is probably 1/8 of an inch off of the table. So if you're trying to cut pieces that are thinner than 1/8 of an inch, it didn't work very well for that. This is how I cut the arrow videos. I do a whole lot with double-sided tape. And so I got a piece of scrap wood and put a couple rows of double-sided tape and put the components that are going to become the arrow down on the tape. And you can't, in the left-hand picture, you can't quite see it, but there's a square below it that I'm trying to keep those square to the table down there where the Chris's mouse is. And I run a whole stack of those. In the second picture, you might be able to see a laser line. I bought a marking laser from Harbor Freight, and I think that was $14. And one of the problems with it is it's not real bright, and the alignment is a secret I haven't quite learned yet. And I thought I had it lined up properly all the way through, and when I made the cut, it was a little bit too far to the left or right. And but what I'm trying to do there is cut right down the center of that red portion. And then to make the arrows, you flip and combine the individual pieces to make an arrowhead shape. And again, I didn't have enough margin. And those are, yeah, that slide shows the diamonds and how they weren't consistent in size and shape. But these are fun. You don't have to use sticks with parallel lines. You can also do things with triangles. And I showed Chris how to make these. I glued up all of mine and used them all up. So I talked him into letting me borrow his pieces. And what you do is you cut these into a series, into strips. And these strips are probably about 2/10 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit less. And we use a tool called an AccuSlice, and it's an accessory for the bandsaw. So I wanted to see a triangle. I see the triangle. And I learned about this on the internet, and this guy that was making Thunderbirds said, you take every other piece and you throw every other one away. And I couldn't see doing that. So these are all numbered. This is 1 and 2. So I'm going to put all the odd ones and all the even ones in a stack. And I'm going to end up with two Thunderbirds instead of one. One a little bit bigger and one a little bit smaller. And it's upside down I'm turning it the wrong way. Okay. So you flip the top one and you flip the bottom one, and there you got a Thunderbird. kind of amazing to me. But what's neat is I can do the same thing with the little ones, and I get a little Thunderbird. So 2 for the price of 1. Now, one of the things that Debbie suggested, among other things, she's my color consultant, but she's also sometimes my proportions consultant. She thought these wings were a little too big for the head, and so we do throw one piece away. And well, actually, I have a box full of those.
Away. We put it in a box.
And I've got a whole stack of things that look just like that. Anyway, the Thunderbird is a lot of fun. I made 80 Thunderbirds in 2 colors. And there's my colors and some of the pictures of what I did. I'd used a little bit different glue tray. I probably one of the second ones I made there. And it lets me put Thunderbirds on both sides. It has legs, so I can put the F clamps in 2 orientations, one holding the pieces down so that they're all flat and even on the top surface. And then I have clamps running perpendicular to that are squeezing the layers together. When I made mine, it was before I learned about the glue roller, or maybe about the time I learned the glue roller, and that worked pretty well. I just wanted to show that because I think it was cool. And we do have a video for that one. This is the AccuSlice. And I think Debbie, no, I took this video and I didn't know that vMix doesn't like the vertical orientation. It likes landscape orientation. So you have to turn your head sideways. But you can see there's a laser line, so Chris can see where he's cut it, and your hands are away from the blade. He's right-handed, so he's a little better than I am about taking the strips away from the blade on the non-business end of the blade. I usually pull the pieces from the other side. So Chris, you made about 80 Thunderbirds? And 120, and there's 12 strips, so you can imagine how many cuts are made. And a slightly more complicated thing, if we can go to slide 12, is a Indian blanket design. And this is, I say it's based on triangles, but it's really based on truncated triangles or trapezoids. You have one that's a little bit blunt and one that's a little bit broader, and then two thin strips on either side. And I think each one of those components makes half of an Indian blanket pattern. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it on the bandsaw with AccuSlice, and we're going to slice the components to get down. I think Malcolm Tibbetts pioneered this particular pattern, and I think he threw away some of the pieces, but I hated doing that, so I used every piece. And that ended up being a little bit of a challenge because the final product ends up being a little bit wide for the bowl that I was working on. This, from the center line up, is one pattern, and from the center line down was a mating pattern. So you have to make 2 of those assemblies to make one facet for the Indian blanket. Again, I'm only showing this because I think it's cool. Alignment on this is really critical, and this was one that didn't end up in Debbie's bowl that she claimed. You can see here that I didn't get the facets quite aligned But it was a pretty good first attempt at that particular pattern. Now we get into pen blanks. And I told you about the chevron leftovers. And I used up all the little triangle pieces making these. But the way I made them was I took all of Debbie's walnut pieces and put them in a pile, and all of the spalted pecan, put them in a different pile. And I matched up pairs that were the same size and glued two triangles together that formed a little bit bigger triangle. And then I took two of those and glued them together, and that formed a rhombus. And then I took two rhombuses and strung them together to make the beginnings of a stick. And in the end, I ended up with this this stick. And this is going to make a gorgeous pen. It's got a couple of voids in it in a couple of places, so we're going to have some turquoise fill opportunities. There's interesting patterns everywhere in it. And I'm saving this for Debbie to make a product, so I haven't made anything from it, but I can tell you this is, because I've done a bunch of these, this is going to be a spectacular blank. The walnut side is made the same way. Take two triangles, glue them together. To do that, I rub them, put a little glue and rub them together to get the glue to start to form. Let it dry for a few hours, and then I sand it. If there's not perfectly aligned somewhere, there is a sanding stage, and then I glue two of those triangles together to form a rhombus, and then I glue rhombuses together. And at each stage there is sanding to be done. Now, in this blank, it's a little bit on the back side. You can see a little bit of a pattern, but on this side, it's a little bit hard to see. You can kind of see the square. I'm not sure how good the camera is showing those. But I have made a pen from that. And this is a Wall Street 2. There's a picture of it in the presentation. But you get round portions. You get lots of chatoyancy, lots of different shapes. It's really interesting. And this is another one that I had done earlier, and this is my shop pen. I use this one every day, and you see some of the same characteristics. It was exactly the same method. This is all walnut in this one. No, this is walnut and ambrosia maple in this one. But I find it fascinating what comes out from gluing together things that you might have thrown away. And stay tuned to see what Debbie's going to do with that spalted pecan one. I believe that one's going to be spectacular. So I said I've got lots of trapezoids, wedges left over. And they're kind of a challenge because some are 30 degrees, some are 45 degrees, some are 12 degrees, some are 15 degrees. Some are 2 inches wide, some are, much narrower. What I did was I dug through the box and found ones that were the same thickness, and then I just stuck them together. I call this a crazy stick, and just glue them together in whatever pattern that feels good at the time. And then I stick it down with double-sided tape and a piece of scrap wood, and cut it off to get a flat edge on one side, and then use the fence to cut it off on the other side. And what you end up with is a stick like this. Now what you can do is you can cut this down the center, flip it, and then glue that back together, and you end up with something that's a little bit more complicated. I made a remember this kit, Debbie? Is this is executive? Executive. I made an executive pin out of it. It's an okay pin. It would have been maybe more interesting if I could have gotten more colors in it. But the only cost to me was spending a little bit of time digging through a box of wedges, and a little bit of my favorite glue, and a little bit of time with the table saw. And it makes a nice pen. A long time ago, I read an article in AAW where a guy had taken regular pen blanks and cut a serpentine line through the blank. And I've made quite a few of those. I need an example. I sort of have it like a sine wave that goes through the blank. And cut this on the bandsaw on that angle, and then put veneer between the two pieces. Let that dry overnight, do a little sanding on it, and then turn it 90 degrees and put the pattern line on it, cut it in the bandsaw, glue it together. Now, the ones that I did a couple of years ago, I did that 4 times. So I ended up on each face with 2 serpentine lines. But I had a little different idea. I was going to go a little farther with it on this, and so I only put 2. And in the past, I would just sort of freehand them, but this time I made templates. And so they all have the same template shape, but I shifted it left or right or up and down to get a little bit of variability in it. And I went crazy. I made 16 of these. So Debbie's going to have fun with those. When you draw the line, you don't want to get too far off of the center line, because you're going to turn away some of the wood. And when you turn it away, you're going to not be able to see the pattern. You want to choose contrasting veneer. And sometimes I've been surprised, things that look to me like that they would really stand out, kind of fade away and you don't really see the line. And sometimes it's really a stark line, and it turns out really attractive. You get really interesting patterns where the lines cross and where there's inflections in the line. And that can be really interesting. There's a video on how I do that on the dots video. Now, Debbie took this video, and the angle she took it from makes my fingers look like they were awfully close to the blade. And I don't think we're that close. She might disagree with me. You see some sparks there. They come from the ceramic cool blocks that I just replaced, and they had no wear on them. So they were sparking it every time the weld line went through. And then following that, the next step is I wanted to, another AAW article talked about putting colored dowels in a blank. Now, he wasn't doing the serpentine blank, so my idea was to combine the two. How about this kit at Woodcraft? It's made in China, and they don't stay sharp for long. but this boy, it's really tough to see. This cutter here is probably 270 degrees, and it's sharp on this surface as well as on these corners. I have successfully sharpened it, or sort of successfully sharpened it. I'll get 3 to 5 more plugs, and then I have to sharpen it again. It's a plug cutter. Sorry. And this kit comes with quarter, 3/8, half, and 5/8. And I made quarter and 3/8 plugs with it. And I think like everything I did getting ready for this project, once I got started, I got a little crazy. So I got a lifetime of plugs. I have Paduke, cherry. I got everything: purple heart, yellow heart, mesquite, pecan. They didn't come out too good. Walnut, Bolivian coffee, and maple. Interestingly, the maple 3/8 turned out a lot better than the quarter-inch ones. That may have been the particular board I was using. Maybe I thought they were both hard maple, but maybe they weren't. Maybe you can see the quarter-inch ones are really not the same size and are not smooth on the walls. I found that when you cut it, it works best. I tried varying the speed, and if I got up around 1500 RPM, I was doing better with the plug cutter. You want a uniform speed. I tried really fast pulling it down. That didn't work. I tried really slow. That didn't work. So kind of a medium speed tended to work best. And it gets really hot. So you want to cut 1 or 2 and then let it cool down and then cut some more. And then there's a dots video. So you can see the dots and the serpentine pattern there. I think it now will show how I drilled to about the center line of the blank. If you're doing a quarter-inch plug, drill a quarter-inch hole. If you're doing a 3/8 plug, drill a 3/8 hole. Takes a little force to get it in, but that's fine. The vise was really important. I couldn't hold it still enough with the irregular shape of the plug cutter. You wanted to wander on me. So the vise was important. And this is my messy process for putting the plugs in. I've got an applesauce cup with some of my favorite glue in it. Get a little bit of glue on a toothpick, swirl it around the inside of the hole, and then shove the plug in it, which you can see I'm really adept. Your fingers will be covered in glue when you're done with this. And then you get the all-important whammer. That's a carpet tack hammer. And it's just the right weight for a lot of things. That's a Purple Heart plug. And they turned out a little bit short and turned out to be just exactly the depth of the hole. So I let these dry for 24 hours and then cut off the excess with one of those Japanese flush cut saws. And then do a little bit of sanding to make the sides flush. Now, I thought with the shaping of the blank when you make the final product, I thought I'd get some ovaling of the blanks, and it did a little bit, but it wasn't as dramatic as I hoped. So I ended up with mostly round plugs, and like a lot of things that I did getting ready for this, I made too many things. So this is a seam ripper. And see this interesting pattern that you get. Can you zoom in on that a little bit, Chris? Page up. Here's where there's an intersection, and it's there. Now you can kind of see it. It's really interesting. And then these are Christmas ornaments. And both of these were box elder. A bunch of us went over to a guy's house that Robert knows, and he, oh, I'm sorry. And we spent 2 days, I guess it was, cutting up this old tree. Now this one here has a little bit of an oval shape, but mostly they didn't as much as I want. These shapes here remind me of neuron shapes in biology. Those two are Purple Heart, Flaming Box Elder. This is Flaming Box Elder, but it's had almost no color in it in that piece. And then this one turned out nice with a good contrast with the wood, and that is mesquite. So I had fun doing those. You can take a chevron, and if the dimensions are right, you can make a pen blank from a chevron. Now these chevrons were made by David Grady. I didn't have any that were done that had the right dimensions, and these were sitting around in his garage. And this is Purple Heart in the middle and canary wood on the edges. And the Purple Heart is hard. And the Purple Heart stayed really dark, and the canary wood has pretty good contrast. It has an interesting shape, but maybe the color combinations weren't real spectacular for this particular purpose. This is another seam ripper kit. I never made those before, so I made a couple to see what that's like. I took pieces 1 1.25, the height of my new gluing tray, and cut strips of a lot of different kinds of wood. Ended up with about 80 strips. These were 0.04 inches in thickness, and I glued them together. And this time I used the Type On 3, and it worked pretty well. And I glued it up in the tray. So James, I'm kind of making James Carter, because we have so many Jims and Jameses in the club. I'm kind of making Spectraply with it. And I think we have a video of that process. So there I'm cutting Paduk. I think they were 7 or 8 inches long, 0.04 inches thick. The good thing about the AccuSlice, and that's the device that I'm using there, is that the thickness is very repeatable. So every piece comes out the same thickness. And you can see I'm always on the business end of the blade because I'm left-handed. I just can't figure out how to get my hands around on the other side. Now to get 80 some pieces, I had to make 80 cuts. The piece of wood I'm cutting is glued to a piece of MDF with double-sided tape. And like I said, I use a lot of type bond. I use a lot of double-sided tape. And this is showing the thickness of being 0.04. I can make them 0.01, but then I end up with 400 strips to glue. And when they get that thin, they're really hard to handle. And now you can see my roller going to town. I put a thin strip of glue, and it spreads the glue out really well. And even though it looks like there's some areas where there isn't any glue, I had no problem with making a pen from this assembly. And I guess I go through a couple of these processes. I'm not using the glue bot because the glue bot's a little bit babe bot because it's a little bit slow, and I wanted to get all these done before the glue set up, and that's why I wanted the extended time. It's kind of interesting glue. It's kind of a thinner consistency than the yellow glue. And I used wax paper to help with the release. And I've got the square frame in the back and angle ironed aluminum, also 1¼ inches on a face. And I'm putting the clamps on. I think I put 3 in this orientation, then I put 2 in between with the handle on the opposite side. With all the handles right on top of each other, they get in your way, and you have a hard time tightening them up. I made 2 assemblies of about 40 pieces, and then I glued the 2 assemblies together to make one wide piece. And I think I back the camera away a little bit so you can see the other brick. Glued up. Let these glue overnight. Glued the 2 together. Let that sit overnight. And then I used the table saw to true up the sides so I had nice smooth sides. I wanted to do was to cut these on a bias. So I wanted to cut this assembly when I made my blanks. I wanted to make them at 7. It's either 7 or 7.5 degrees. I don't remember. Probably 7.5. And so I got my miter gauge, set it to 7.5 degrees, stuck the I call it a brick to the miter gauge with a double-sided tape, and went to run it through, and it didn't come anywhere close to the blade. So I got a piece of MDF and I cut that at 7.5 degrees, and then used the table saw to cut the blanks on this bias. So I did use the miter gauge, but I used it to cut a sacrificial board, stuck the brick to the piece of MDF with the double-sided tape, and then cut these segments. And what you end up with is really interesting. You can see the bias, but if you turn it on the other face, you get this sort of rainbow effect, a bias and a rainbow effect. And then this is I can get two pieces out of the brick that I made, and there's just a little bit of thinning out because of the angle on this one. But I think this is a really pretty blank. I like that. And I got another piece that didn't make the bias. It just wasn't enough material to do it. So this piece ended up mostly straight green. And I don't throw anything away. I've got a tiny piece left over. I don't know what I'll ever do with it. But I made a pin with it. This is a all straight 2. And it's really interesting what parallel lines turn into when you cut them at an angle. 7.5 degrees. Why 7.5 degrees? If I made it 15 degrees, I'd only get one piece out of it. If I made it 30, I'm not even sure to get one piece out of it, just the way the geometry worked.
So really your angle was just determined by how much you wanted to get out of it.
Yeah, a little bit, but also wanted to have enough of an angle that I'd see an effect. I could get 3 pieces if I made 1 degree a cut, but I don't think you'd see any effect. So 7.5 turned out to be pretty nice. So you guys are tired of PowerPoint. I'm tired of PowerPoint. You get to watch me turn something. And I'll tell you in advance, I'm not real fast. So if you get tired, go get a adult beverage and come back and see how I'm doing.
Oh, were we supposed to wait until now for the adult beverage? My bad.
Thanks. By the way, Andrew's the one that talked me into doing this. So if you see him coming, say yes.
That's good advice.
Looks like you had a lot of prep.
You know, I guess I was putting off deciding what I was going to do. I had a lot of fun just playing with stuff, seeing what comes out. Now, you notice I'm not using the TBC bushings. I have not had success with them. I think it's probably my 60-degree cones aren't mating properly with the TBC bushings. Andrew, sometime when you're around, maybe we could look at that and see what I'm doing wrong. But I was getting ovaling on particularly one end, and that makes an ugly pin.
Yep. Yeah. More than happy to help.
So this is going to be another Christmas ornament. This is a flaming box elder with a purple serpentine veneer. I've got 3/8 and 1/4 inch dowels, 2, 5, 6, 7, 7 in this particular piece. Coffee, Baduke, pecan, I think, purple heart, and that's maybe mahogany. Tight. So this is, I forget the name of the pen mandrel, but it's the one where you clamp it down with this nut. And I've had really good luck with this one. You remember the name of it, Debbie? It probably costs more than the TBC bushings do. Okay, so it's
that the
tax season,
woodpecker,
so I'm
Blaine?
running at 1040 RPM. And I like to make my piece stop. The hard part is getting it a little bit round. It goes a lot faster once you get that past that. And I know this isn't the this sounds funny. Should have done this part first. Then you wouldn't have to see it.
But we want to see it.
Notice the wild ambidextrous form.
Maybe a skew chisel would work better.
I didn't hear that question. Well, the smart comment is really appropriate. So I'm hoping to get through this quick, because what I think is interesting is the finishing process that Debbie and I have come up with. Got an interesting noise. So this one's ovaling just a little bit.
Take your hat off. Take your hat off.
Debbie says I have to take my hat off, but this is my lucky hat.
Put it
Put
on
my lucky
backwards
hat over
then.
here. Why do I have to take my hat off?
Because it was in the way of the camera.
Oh. If I do, that was by design, because then you don't see my form. And everybody likes these tools, so this is the second time I've used this one.
What is it?
Is that a Doug Thompson?
That your Thompson tool? What is that?
Alamo Pen Turners Christmas 2020. I was a winner.
Yay.
Looks like a 3/8 Thompson spindle gouge.
I'm trying to go too fast.
It is just a little bit trickier to turn a segmented blank, I think, than a regular blank. Because you've got grain going in all directions where you've glued stuff together, and you've also got the glue joints. So I find soft and hardwood, I find it helpful to take real small bites and keep your tool sharp.
This one's going to have a longer neck than I have done on the others. And I'm not really liking the shape I'm coming up with. You know, I made 6 of these, and I didn't expose the bushing on any of them until tonight.
Did the peg come out, or?
Yeah, but we're going to do a save. No, we could fill it with something, but that'll take a little bit of time. There's no reason it has to be this length, because
Versus the demo.
no, it's an ornament. This doesn't have a mechanical part that goes in it. So there's no reason it can't be this long. We just have to figure out how to cut it.
But you're right, James, it is a demo. Anything that can go wrong will.
And probably what I'll do is I'll do that later, but I can do the finishing on this bottom part to show you the process that we came up with. It's based on a video we saw, but we've modified the process some, and we're having really good luck with it. And what I like about it, because I want to get back to doing something besides doing the finicky pin turning. And I can get a finish on in a really short period of time. We use Glue Boost. So this is a part I'm not really good at. I'm a guy. I want to move on to the next stage, but that's close enough for a messed up blank. And I can show you how we finish it, and we can concentrate on this lower portion. There's this sandpaper made by 3M, and it's flexible. It's really neat. It comes in 3 grits, 150, 220 or 240, and 330. And it lasts longer than.
Go overhead. Chris, can you go overhead?
I have to remember to put my hands in the right place. And I should slow it down a little bit. And I've used this piece for quite a while. They say it lasts something like 8 times longer than a sandpaper, and I think it does. already feels pretty good. We go to 220. I have never found the 330. This works really good when you have uh, something more complicated in the shape and you need to get in a valley or around the hole in the blank.
Where did you purchase the sandpaper, Jim?
Home Depot. I just stumbled on it. No, actually, I got an email from 3M advertising the availability of it. I don't know why. I never really bought anything from them before, and I looked for it and I found it at Home Depot in the paint row with the other sandpaper. It's not always in stock, so you and you can buy it at Amazon and probably direct from 3M. Like I said, it only comes in those 3 grits, and somebody told me that it was designed for doing finishing of wall boards, where you're finishing the plaster, which seems like a crazy purpose for it because it's so good for woodworking. Now, this is these discs that everybody asks about that I hang on the wall behind me, and I've got a disc of 320 sandpaper since I don't have the 3M product. And it's because it's got a nice backing and I got a fairly straight line. This makes a pretty nice sanding edge. And then this is 400. And I want to get to the good stuff. So we're gonna say that we sanded on this long enough to make it perfectly smooth. It feels pretty good. So we just want to clean up the sanding. It brings out the color real nice, especially the color of that bushing.
The tube.
I have a well-loved, well-used piece of cardboard that I use to protect my lathe when I'm doing this. And we're going to use Glue Boost Fill and Finish Pro Formula. This is the thick, otherwise known as blue. Now we have been using the blue shop towels. If you haven't bought that lately, the quality of the package of blue shop towels that I bought is awful. It's coarse. The CA smokes on it very readily. So I'm using a different product. This is called Rag in a Box. And I cut it into thin strips, just like we do with the blue towels. Run the lathe at about 500. And I'm only going to do three passes. The other reason we like, oh, this is the Glue Boost Blue. And then this is the accelerator. The interesting thing about this one is it's CA brand agnostic. It works with any of them. And it doesn't, what do they call it, blush? It doesn't make that frothy looking mess. So I put a couple drops on it and just go up, and I'm going to try to stay away from that bad spot so I don't glue the piece to the mandrel. 1, 2, 3. sticks to your fingers, just like any other CA. And we're done with the blue after I put some accelerator on it. Now, one step that I do that Debbie doesn't do, and she doesn't know about, it's a secret, is at this stage, I take some 4/0 steel wool and real lightly, so we'll do it a little bit more heavily later. I'm going to just level out what's there. This is a real light, so light that it'll pick up out of your hand and you get wrapped around. And that's all you need to do. And it looks pretty good. The next stage is with the thick. And you can see some fine lines there. But they'll go away in the next stage. And sometimes I've done just a little bit with the 400. Now I've got some dust, and you have to clean that just a little bit. So this is the Novus plastic clean and shine. And to do that, now I've added moisture, so you need to dry it real good. And now I'm going to do 3 more coats with the, it's still orange. I remember it as blue first and then orange. I really like the bottles this comes in too. Don't have the plug-in that I've seen in other kinds of glue, especially the hot stuff that Woodcraft sells. Woodcraft is selling mercury adhesives now, and that comes in a really nice bottle, and I like that glue. And I thought that was going to be my forever CA, but then I discovered Glue Boost in the back of the AAW magazine. I'm sure all of you start at the back and work forward because you want to see all the new products that came out. That's what I do. That's where I found the AccuSlice. That's where I found the Glue Boost. And that got hot. That was 2. I'm going to do 1 more. You can do more if you want. This bottle's almost empty. Now we're going to go back to the 4/0 steel wool. A little bit more aggressive this time. So I've done the 4/0 steel wool. I'll stop and make sure I don't have any pieces stuck on it. Then I'm going to go back to the 400 on this disc just a little bit. This is a step that Debbie added after watching that video she likes to do. And if she likes to do it and her pins turn out better than mine, then I must like to do it too. Okay. We use a wet sanding method. And the first step is to use the Novus clean and shine, clean off that debris. And this goes pretty fast. Yeah, she's always looking for those, she calls them sparkles, I call them ridges. We learned about this at SWAT, the year that Tony Randall was doing it, and one of the young men was using this and was impressed with it, and we found it at SWAT, and we've been using this, and it's goes from 1 to 9, and I've lost number 5, so we're going to go from 1 to 9, but not 5, and it doesn't seem to make any difference. Debbie spends like 5 minutes per grit, but I haven't found that you need to do that, and that's plenty. Okay. Comes from Wood World of Texas, and it looks like that. You can cut it in strips. There have the grits numbered on the back. Micro mesh basic woodworking. 9 sheets with a foam block. And believe it or not, you can get it back in that plastic envelope. Debbie puts all of her strips in the water at once. I put 2 in, and that way I don't have to fish around to find it, and it didn't have to get real wet. So I don't always do what she says. Can you,
Use them that way if I put them all in at once.
you sand with all 9 of them at once?
Yeah, it only takes her 5 minutes.
Keep all of them in the water at once. They don't get lost.
I put 2 at a time, so I've got one getting wet, and I've got one that is wet. And she's used the heck out of these. And so I've used the heck out of them. You know, you're supposed to use sandpaper like somebody else is paying for it. She uses this like she's paying for it.
Damn.
So it's going pretty fast. I'm already on 4.
5 minutes per one either.
She takes a little bit longer than I do, but I haven't found that that's necessary. One of the things you're looking for is a shine line, and it's there. I can see it a little better than you can. It's the shine line is forming up pretty nice. Oh, I forgot to get. Oh, see, I didn't have 5, so here's 6. So 5 is virtually getting wet.
If you really want to see how far you've come at this point, you have to dry it a little bit and then look.
Yeah, the water is a little misleading. I do about 5 passes or so. It kind of depends on what music is playing. I might do a little bit longer if there's something I like. This is 7. We're going to 9. And number 9. Four, 5. Now you can throw it all back in the water. Okay. So we're going to Novus Heavy Scratch Remover. It just takes a spot. My spots are twice as big as Debbie's. So I'm a guy, more is better. So a little bit of friction on this one. dried up real good. Looking pretty good. And then we go to the fine, and I do the same thing, and we'll see, it'll work. It's going to come out, except it's empty. See? Came out. She uses a little bit. I use a lot of this stuff because I have a lot of scratches that I need to get out. And then clean that up a little bit. And I usually do it twice because I have a lot of scratches to get out. And I think you used to let it dry. And rub it down real good. Then we'll get the cleaner, number 1.
Shake that up good.
Shake it.
It's not.
I never do that.
It's not clear. If you look at it, it's got a fine grit in it.
Okay. Well, then it's got a lot of fine grit in the bottom of it because I've made a lot of things I have been shaking it.
Read the instructions.
You taught me how to do this, and I'm doing it by memory, and I don't have a good memory.
There's instructions.
Okay, we're going to call that done. Oh,
You can get it that way. Yeah. I think you can buy them separate too, but yeah, because he's bought me a few separate when I've run out.
Shiny.
it looks really good. It's really good right on this ridge. I'm seeing a reflection of that whole light there. I'm not seeing any ridges. Just slight ovaling of the Paducah in there. One thing that I found is, particularly when you're doing a thin piece, this is not a thin piece. It didn't hurt to do a little bit of CA work around the spot, because some pins, the coating of wood that you have over the bushing is really thin, and sometimes you need a little bit of help holding it on. But that actually looks pretty good. Yeah, it's got a nice finish. Let's see if I stuck it. No, I didn't stick it. Good. You didn't tell me that I missed a step, Debbie. We usually use these nylon bushings. And I forgot to take, no. Because that came off real easy that time. And I didn't get any glue on this other end. But I'll have to see. So this will be in the raffle for 25 cents. You'll get a chance for this one. We'll see if
25 cents or 2 for 15.
Yeah, I'll trim it off. It'll be 25 cents for the bottom part and 15 cents for the top part. We'll see what I can come up with. That's a shame because it came out pretty good.
Yeah, it did.
Will you take $8?
So speaking of raffle, I will go through all the stuff that I made, and we'll pick out several things, and there'll be some serpentine blanks, some spots. I don't think that bowl will make it. I'll have a segmented bowl to show in a few weeks. Chris has seen a preview of it.
For the raffle?
I don't think you could pry it out of his hands.
Can we get a better view of this?
There.
Anyway, I like that glue boost process. It's fast. I've gotten really good results, the best that I've gotten with any glue, and I can move on to my next project, which is what I like. So that's it.
The neat thing about these is he made all of those blanks. Well, not all of them, but most of them with leftover from segmenting. But you don't have to do segmenting. You can glue together any pieces you want. Take scraps, cut them up, glue them together in funny shapes, whatever.
All of these were in a box we bought at Woodcraft of 100 pen blanks. And so I just dug through those and found some. But I've got 16 of these. They won't all be in the raffle, but some of them will be. And they're long enough to do one long click or 2 and maybe 3 wall straights, and 6 half Christmas ornaments. Anyway, that's it.
Jim, thanks for your demonstration tonight. It was informative.
Very much so. I like that walnut on walnut grime that you had earlier. That the ones where you had them. You said you'd done them in different shapes and glued them together. That you had that pin in your presentation. I like because you can't really see it until you have it on that pin, and then all of a sudden the shapes pop.
Goes in different directions. It just really makes the distinctive parts pop.
Mm-hmm.
I think these blanks would rival any acrylic blank you can get.
They're a lot more fun to turn too. They don't put plastic curls all over you.
Yeah.
I enjoy the pen blanks that you can buy from any number of vendors, and you can make beautiful pens with them. But I enjoy making my own blanks and seeing what comes out.
See,
I can't wait to see what the spalted pecan one will turn into. That has so much going on with the glue lines. Will be prominent, but with the spalting on top of that, and probably some turquoise fill here and there, that's just going to be a spectacular blank. And I'm going to let Debbie do it because she's much less likely to mess it up than I am.
I have broken a few of those.